He never knew his bride was a wolf until their wedding night. Hook, the wedding night. On the night of his wedding, as he reached out to touch his bride for the first time, he noticed something no husband ever should. Her skin wasn't warm, it was changing. By sunrise, one of them would vanish, and the truth would stay buried for decades. This story is real to the people who survived it. Stay with me, because what happens later will change how you see trust, marriage, and the people you think you know. He thought he married the love of his life, but who was she, really? Who was the woman he married? Why did she hide the truth until that night? And what really happened after the screams stopped? Because some secrets aren't meant to survive marriage. Backstory and character setup before the wedding. Daniel Harper was the kind of man people trusted, church-going, reliable, recently widowed. At 47, he taught mathematics at Jefferson County High School in rural Pennsylvania. His students described him as patient, predictable, someone who never raised his voice. His wife of 23 years, Margaret, had died from breast cancer 2 years earlier. The house still smelled like her lavender lotion. Her reading glasses sat on the nightstand, untouched. Daniel wasn't drowning in grief anymore, but he was lonely in a way that made Sundays unbearable. He wasn't looking for passion or adventure. He was looking for someone to share coffee with in the morning, someone to sit beside him during evening news. He was looking for peace, for routine, for the gentle comfort of companionship in middle age. That's when he met Clara at a church potluck in September. She had moved to town 3 months earlier, renting a small cottage on the edge of Pinewood Forest. She worked remotely as a medical transcriptionist, which explained why no one really knew her. She was beautiful in an understated way, with dark hair always pulled back, pale skin that seemed to glow in candlelight, and eyes that held something Daniel couldn't quite name. Not sadness exactly, more like caution. She wore long sleeves even in warm weather, gloves when she gardened, and never accepted invitations that involved staying out past sunset. Daniel found her modesty refreshing. In a world that felt increasingly chaotic and loud, Clara was quiet, composed, almost old-fashioned. When she agreed to dinner, he felt like he'd won something precious. Their courtship was brief. 3 months of coffee dates, Sunday services together, walks through town square. Clara never invited him to her cottage. She always met him in public spaces, always left before dark. When Daniel proposed on a cold December evening outside the town's Christmas tree, she hesitated. For just a moment, her face changed, something wild and afraid flickering behind her eyes. Then she smiled, kissed him softly, and said, yes. They set the wedding for late March, a small ceremony with fewer than 30 guests. Daniel's family liked her. His older sister, Susan, said Clara reminded her of the women from old photographs, dignified and self-contained. His brother Mark joked that Daniel had found himself a mystery woman. Everyone laughed. No one realized how true that was. Clara was different, beautiful, but guarded. She avoided doctors, claiming she had a rare blood condition that made medical visits complicated. She never stayed overnight at Daniel's house, always leaving by 9 p.m. with apologetic kisses and promises of soon. When Daniel suggested a honeymoon in the Smoky Mountains, she grew pale and changed the subject. She refused to be photographed at night, turning away from cameras with a nervous laugh. Once, Daniel caught her staring at the full moon through his kitchen window, her whole body tense, her breathing shallow. When he asked if she was all right, she flinched, as though waking from a dream. Daniel mistook silence for modesty. He didn't realize it was fear. He thought she was shy, perhaps traumatized by something in her past she wasn't ready to share. He told himself that marriage would help her feel safe, that time would open her up. He had no idea that time was exactly what she was running out of. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The Incident Wedding Night. The ceremony took place at St. Catherine's Church on a Saturday afternoon. The late March sky was overcast but dry, the kind of weather that feels like the world is holding its breath. Clara wore a simple ivory dress, no veil, her hair braided with small white flowers. Daniel wore his father's wedding suit, altered to fit. The service was brief and traditional. Clara's hands shook when she took her vows, but Daniel assumed it was nerves. Everyone does that, he thought. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Clara kissed him quickly, almost desperately, and whispered something he didn't catch. The reception was held at the church hall, punch and cake, a small band playing acoustic covers. Clara barely ate. She kept glancing at the windows, watching the sun descend. By 6 p.m., the sky was turning violet. By 7, Daniel noticed Clara had gone pale, her breathing quick and shallow. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked. She nodded, but her eyes said otherwise. They left the reception early, driving to Daniel's house in silence. Clara sat with her hands clenched in her lap, staring straight ahead. Daniel tried to make conversation, asking if she wanted to change out of her dress, if she wanted tea, if she was tired. She answered in monosyllables. When they arrived home, Clara walked straight to the bedroom and closed the door. Daniel waited in the living room, confused and a little hurt. After 20 minutes, he knocked softly. "Clara," he said, "can I come in?" There was a long pause. Then her voice, strained and small. "Yes, but please, if you love me, don't turn on the light." Daniel opened the door slowly. The room was dark, except for 2 candles flickering on the dresser. Clara stood near the window, her back to him, still in her wedding dress. The moonlight coming through the curtains was bright, almost unnaturally so. Daniel stepped closer. "Clara, what's wrong?" She didn't turn around. Her shoulders were trembling. "I should have told you," she whispered. "I thought maybe, if I loved you enough, if I wanted it enough, it wouldn't happen. But it always happens." Daniel felt a cold prick of fear in his chest. "What are you talking about?" Clara finally turned to face him, and that's when he saw it. Her eyes had changed. They weren't the soft brown he'd fallen in love with. They were amber, glowing faintly in the dark, reflecting the candlelight like an animal's. Her hands, delicate and pale, now ended in nails that were too long, too sharp, slightly curved. And her teeth, when she spoke, he could see them, elongated canines pressing against her lower lip. Daniel stumbled backward, his heart hammering. Clara stepped toward him, and he heard it, the faint sound of bones shifting, the crackle of something beneath her skin rearranging itself. Her breathing had become ragged, almost a growl. She was fighting it, he realized, fighting something inside her. "I'm sorry," she gasped, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. Daniel, you have to leave. Now." But Daniel couldn't move. He was frozen, his mind trying to reconcile the woman he married with the creature standing before him. "What are you?" he whispered. Clara's face twisted in anguish. She dropped to her knees, clutching her stomach as though in pain. The transformation was accelerating. Her spine arched, her dress tearing slightly at the seams. "Please," she begged, her voice barely human now. "Go. Lock the door. Don't come back until morning." Daniel ran. He stumbled out of the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and locked it from the outside. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely turn the key. From inside the room, he heard a sound that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A howl. Not quite wolf, not quite human. Something in between. It was a sound of agony and rage, and something else. Something that felt ancient and unstoppable. He backed away from the door, his legs weak. He thought about calling the police, thought about running to his car and driving away, but he didn't. Some part of him, the part that had loved Clara, that had promised to stand by her, kept him in that house. He spent the night on the living room couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds coming from upstairs. Scratching, pacing, low, guttural growls. Once, he heard the window rattle, as though something had tried to escape. By 4 a.m., the sounds stopped. The house fell silent. Daniel didn't sleep. He just waited, praying for sunrise. When the first light crept through the windows, Daniel walked upstairs. His legs felt like lead. He unlocked the bedroom door and pushed it open slowly. The room was destroyed. The curtains were shredded, claw marks gouged deep into the wooden floor. The bed was overturned, the mattress torn open, feathers scattered everywhere. And in the center of the room, crumpled on the floor in her torn wedding dress, was Clara. She was human again. Her hands were normal, her eyes closed, her face streaked with tears. Daniel knelt beside her, afraid to touch her, afraid she might change again. "Clara," he whispered. She didn't respond. Her skin was cold. For a terrible moment, he thought she was dead. Then her eyes opened, and she looked at him with such profound sadness that it broke something inside him. "I told you to leave," she said quietly. Daniel shook his head, tears running down his face. "What happened to you?" Clara sat up slowly, pulling the remains of her dress around her. She looked at the destruction around them, and fresh tears fell. "This is what I am," she said. "This is what my family has been for generations. We don't get sick, we don't age like normal people, but every full moon, we change. And last night was the first full moon after our wedding. I thought maybe, if I married someone good, if I tried hard enough, I could stop it. But I can't. I'll never be able to stop it." Daniel sat back, trying to process what she was saying. "You're telling me you're a werewolf?" Clara laughed bitterly. "That's the word people use. My grandmother called it the old blood. My mother called it a curse. I just call it hell." Daniel looked at her, this woman he'd married, this stranger he thought he knew. "Why didn't you tell me?" Clara wiped her face. "Because I was selfish. Because I was lonely. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, you could love me anyway." She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. "But I was wrong. You should leave, Daniel. File for an annulment. Forget you ever met me." And before he could respond, before he could tell her that despite everything, despite the fear and the shock, some part of him still loved her, Clara walked out of the room. She grabbed a coat from the hallway, slipped on shoes, and walked out the front door into the early morning light. Daniel followed her to the porch, calling her name. But Clara didn't stop. She walked down the driveway, down the empty street, and disappeared into the woods at the edge of town. And that was the last time Daniel Harper saw his wife. Aftermath and investigation, the vanishing. Daniel waited 2 days before calling the police. He didn't know what to say. How do you explain that your wife transformed into a wolf on your wedding night and then vanished into the forest? He told them a simpler version. Clara had seemed upset after the wedding. They'd argued, she'd left in the middle of the night, and he hadn't seen her since. The police took a report. They searched the woods, interviewed neighbors, checked bus stations and hospitals. No one had seen Clara. Her cottage was empty, her belongings still inside. Her car was parked in Daniel's driveway. It was as though she'd evaporated. The search went on for 2 weeks. Volunteers combed Pinewood Forest, calling her name, distributing flyers with her photograph. Daniel joined them, pale and hollow-eyed, answering the same questions over and over. What was her state of mind? Had she threatened to hurt herself? Did she have family somewhere else? Then the police found something that changed everything. Deep in the woods, about 3 miles from Daniel's house, they discovered torn fabric that matched Clara's wedding dress. Nearby, there were scratches on tree trunks, deep gouges that couldn't have been made by human hands. And there was blood. Not much, just smears on the bark and forest floor. But when it was tested, the results were inconclusive. The lab report said the blood contained markers that didn't match any known animal or human profile. It was dismissed as contamination, but the lead detective, a man named Frank Mercer, kept the report. He showed it to Daniel privately one afternoon. "I don't know what happened to your wife," Mercer said, "but whatever left these marks wasn't normal." Daniel said nothing. What could he say? Mercer leaned closer. "If there's something you're not telling me, now's the time." Daniel met his eyes. "I've told you everything I can." Mercer studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but if she contacts you, you call me immediately." Daniel promised he would. As the weeks passed, the town's sympathy began to curdle into suspicion. People started whispering. Daniel had been alone with Clara on their wedding night. The bedroom was destroyed. There was blood in the woods. Maybe Clara hadn't run away. Maybe Daniel had done something to her. Maybe the quiet, mild-mannered math teacher had a dark side no one had seen. The whispers grew louder. Parents at the school started pulling their kids from his classes. Anonymous letters appeared in his mailbox, accusing him of murder. Someone spray-painted the word killer on his garage door. Daniel stopped going to church. He stopped answering his phone. His sister Susan begged him to hire a lawyer to defend himself publicly, but Daniel just shook his head. "They wouldn't believe the truth," he said quietly, "and I can't blame them. I barely believe it myself." The official investigation continued for 6 months. Detectives interviewed everyone who'd known Clara, trying to piece together her past. They discovered she'd moved frequently, never staying in one place longer than a year. Her employment records were sparse, her medical history non-existent. She'd listed no emergency contacts, no family. One detective tracked down an address in Montana where Clara had lived 3 years earlier. The landlord remembered her as polite but strange, always paying rent in cash, never seen during certain times of the month. When pressed, the landlord mentioned that livestock in the area had gone missing while Clara was there. 3 sheep, 2 goats. The detective noted it, but couldn't make a connection. In the end, the case was classified as a voluntary disappearance. Clara Harper was listed as missing, presumed dead. The file was closed. Daniel was never charged with anything, but in the eyes of Jefferson County, he would always be guilty of something. The twist, what she really was. Daniel tried to move on. He sold the house, unable to sleep in the bedroom where everything had fallen apart. He moved to a small apartment above a hardware store in the next town over. He took a job at a different school where no one knew his story. He went through the motions of living, but part of him remained frozen in that terrible night, watching Clara transform, hearing her howl. He dreamed about her constantly. Sometimes she was human, standing in a field of wildflowers, smiling at him the way she had during their courtship. Other times she was the creature, eyes glowing, claws extended, stalking him through endless dark woods. He woke from those dreams, gasping, his heart racing, unsure which version of Clara he feared more, or which one he missed. 5 years after Clara disappeared, Daniel received a package. There was no return address, just his name, written in elegant cursive on brown paper. Inside was a leather journal, old and worn, the pages yellowed with age. A note was tucked inside the front cover. "This belonged to my grandmother," it read. "She wanted you to understand." It was unsigned, but Daniel knew the handwriting. It was Clara's. He sat down at his kitchen table and began to read. The journal was written in the 1940 seconds by a woman named Eloise Hartley. She described her life in a remote mountain community, a place where certain families carried what she called the old blood. These families, she wrote, were different. They healed faster than normal people. They lived longer, sometimes decades past what should have been possible. But there was a price. Once every lunar cycle, when the moon was full, the change would come. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't controllable. It simply was. Eloise described the transformation in clinical detail: the pain, the loss of human thought, the overwhelming instinct to run, to hunt. She wrote about the shame that followed, the constant fear of being discovered, the isolation required to protect others. She'd married once, she wrote, a kind man who'd loved her deeply. She'd tried to hide the truth from him, but on their wedding night, under a full moon, the secret had revealed itself. He'd run from her, terrified. She'd never seen him again. After that, Eloise had lived alone, moving every few years to avoid suspicion. She'd never had children, determined to let the bloodline end with her. But her sister had not been so careful. Her sister had 3 daughters, and all 3 carried the curse. One of those daughters was Clara's mother. The journal contained letters tucked between the pages, correspondence between Eloise and her nieces. They wrote about the desperate measures they'd taken. Some tried locking themselves in basements during full moons. Others moved to remote areas where they could run free without endangering anyone. One letter, dated 1978, was from Clara's mother. She wrote about her daughter, a little girl who'd shown the first signs at age 12. "She's terrified," the letter said. "She cries every time the moon rises. I don't know how to help her. I don't know how to tell her that this will be her whole life." There was another letter, much later, dated just 2 years before Daniel met Clara. It was from Clara herself, addressed to her grandmother Eloise, who died decades earlier. Clara had written it anyway, perhaps as a way to process her grief. "I met someone," she wrote. "He's kind and decent, and he makes me feel almost normal. I know I should stay away from him. I know this can only end badly, but I'm so tired of being alone. I'm so tired of running. Maybe if I try hard enough, maybe if I love him enough, I can be the person he sees when he looks at me. Maybe I can be human." Daniel closed the journal, his hands trembling. He understood now. Clara hadn't been hiding a secret to deceive him. She'd been hiding it to protect him, to protect herself from the inevitable heartbreak. She'd hoped, against all evidence and experience, that love might be stronger than biology. And when it wasn't, when the transformation came anyway, she'd done the only thing she could. She'd left, sparing him from a life of fear and danger. Daniel sat in his empty apartment, staring at the journal, and for the first time since that terrible night, he cried. Not from fear or anger, but from understanding. Clara had loved him. Maybe she still did, and she'd walked away because of it. Final twist and resolution, the knock. 10 years after Clara disappeared, Daniel was 58 years old. He still taught math, still lived in the same modest apartment. He'd never remarried, never even dated. Part of him felt like he was still married to a ghost. He kept the journal in a locked drawer, reading it sometimes late at night when sleep wouldn't come. He'd stopped looking for Clara years ago. If she'd wanted to be found, she would have reached out. The fact that she hadn't told him everything he needed to know, she was protecting him still. Even in absence, even in silence, she was loving him the only way she knew how. Daniel had made peace with that, or thought he had. It was late November, a cold night, with frost forming on the windows. Daniel was grading papers at his kitchen table when he heard it. A knock at the door. 3 soft taps, hesitant, almost apologetic. He glanced at the clock, nearly midnight. No one visited him this late. He approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, her face partially shadowed. She wore a long coat, her hands tucked in her pockets. Something about her posture, the tilt of her head, sent recognition flooding through him. He opened the door slowly. Clara stood before him, and yet she looked exactly as she had 10 years ago. No gray in her hair, no lines on her face, her skin still pale and smooth, her eyes still that soft brown he remembered. But there was something different in her expression now. Not fear or caution, just exhaustion and a kind of resigned sadness. "Hello, Daniel," she said quietly. Her voice was the same, gentle and measured. For a moment, he couldn't speak. He just stared, wondering if he was dreaming, if grief had finally driven him to hallucination. "You're real," he finally said. She nodded. "I'm real. Can I come in?" Daniel stepped aside, and Clara walked into his apartment. She looked around, taking in the small space, the simple furniture, the life he'd built without her. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry for leaving. I'm sorry for everything." Daniel closed the door, his heart pounding. "Why are you here? Why now?" Clara sat down on the couch, and Daniel noticed how carefully she moved, as though afraid of breaking something. "I've been watching you," she admitted. "Not closely, not often. Just enough to know you were safe. I saw you moved, saw you were teaching again. I told myself that was enough, that I should stay away. But tonight, I couldn't anymore. Tonight, I needed to know if you hated me." Daniel sat across from her, searching her face. "I don't hate you. I never did." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You should. I lied to you. I put you in danger. I destroyed our wedding night, and then I abandoned you." Daniel leaned forward. "You saved me. You could have stayed, could have let me live with that danger. But you left to protect me. That's not something to hate. That's something to love. Clara covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. You don't understand what it's like. The things I've done during the changes, the fear that I'll hurt someone I care about. I can't ever be close to anyone. I can't have a normal life. Every full moon, I have to lock myself away or run into the wilderness. I've spent 10 years alone, Daniel. Completely alone. And I will be alone for the rest of my life because that's what keeps people safe. Daniel felt something break open inside him. What if you didn't have to be alone? Clara looked up, confusion in her eyes. What? Daniel stood, pacing the small room. What if we figured it out together? You could come here a few days before every full moon. I'd help you prepare, make sure you're somewhere safe. And the rest of the time, you could be here, with me. We could try. Clara shook her head. You don't know what you're asking. I do, Daniel said firmly. I've spent 10 years thinking about that night, about you, about what I would say if I ever saw you again. And I know exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking you to let me love you, even if it's complicated, even if it's dangerous. Because the alternative, living without you, has been worse than anything that happened that night. Clara stood, crossing to him. Daniel, I haven't aged. I'll be like this for decades, maybe longer. You'll grow old, and I'll stay the same. Eventually, you'll resent me for it. He took her hands, and she didn't pull away. Then we'll deal with that when it comes. But right now, tonight, I'm asking you to stay. Not forever, just tonight. We'll figure out tomorrow when it gets here. Clara searched his face, and slowly, something shifted in her expression. The fear didn't disappear, but it softened. She nodded, just barely. Okay, just tonight. They sat together on that small couch, talking until the sun came up. Clara told him about the years she'd spent wandering, the places she'd hidden during full moons, the loneliness that had carved her hollow. Daniel told her about the investigation, the suspicion, the way he'd defended her even when no one believed him. They didn't solve everything that night. They didn't erase the curse or find a magical cure, but they found something else. They found that love, real love, isn't about perfect circumstances or easy choices. It's about looking at someone fully, seeing every strange and difficult truth about them, and choosing to stay anyway. Clara didn't leave the next morning, or the morning after that. She stayed, and slowly, carefully, they built a life together. It wasn't normal. Once a month, Clara would leave for 3 days. Locking herself in a reinforced room Daniel built in a rented storage unit on the edge of town. He'd bring her food afterward, hold her while she cried, tell her it was okay. And the rest of the time, they were just two people who loved each other, navigating the ordinary and extraordinary moments of shared life. They never had a second wedding. They never needed one. The first one, chaotic and terrifying as it was, had bound them in ways no ceremony could improve. Some marriages reveal secrets, others awaken them, and a few, the rarest ones, survive them. So I'm asking you, what do you think really happened that night? Was Clara a monster or a victim? Did Daniel survive or was he spared? And would you have opened the door if someone you loved, someone who'd left you with nothing but questions and fear, knocked 10 years later asking for a second chance? Comment below because I read every single one. And if you think this story was unsettling, wait until you hear about the woman who lived 2 lives at the same time. Subscribe for more real-life mysteries that refuse to stay buried. Because some stories don't end when people disappear. They end when someone finally understands why.